and I just wanted to have a very simple presentation what is going on in the space with regard to new projects, to old new space also, and also scientific explorations that we all hear about. Here, I try to catch up what would be the topic of regulation and what obviously satellites space for many years attracted humanity, and we are all curious to explore. But the initial introduction into space was to better understand the Earth, and this is why you have orbiting the Earth orbit through different category of and those one are divided generally into three main category of satellite. The first one are the ones that are in the low Earth orbits, around 600 kilometers from the surface of the Earth. And you hear a lot about the International Space Stations, which is around 400 kilometers. You have also a lot of new telecom constellations that we heard to Kuiper and other new entrants. My company is providing these orbits, and I will go deeper into that afterwards. If you go beyond satellites, you have MEO orbit for medium Earth orbits, where you have satellite communications that everybody use when you try to find yourself. Often activate GNSS satellite constellation, LEO, GPS, Baidu in China, etc. And they are all located around 20,000 kilometers. If we go a little bit further away, you have a very specific where the particularity that you are fixed in space with regard to the Earth, meaning that the satellite will communicate always in the same area on Earth. Very interesting for many services, and one which is often used by TV broadcasting that is allowed to these specific orbits. Those are satellite communications systems, and we see that the access to a certain orbit are very specific, and everybody wants to be at the same place. This is why there is regulation in place to ensure that everything runs smoothly. And in another domain, you have many explorations beyond Earth, meaning that space serves also to better explore what is going on beyond our little planets. And you have many activities and initiatives worldwide where you have big, let's say, cooperations between agencies, space agencies worldwide, and scientific communities to try to explore this part of the world that we still don't know all aspects. And to do so, many engines and tools to capture data and to retrieve them to the Earth. You have many lunar and Mars explorations. And I think it was in December 2021, we of the James Webb Telescope that is put at the Point de Lagrange, around the sun, and this was a big event 2 years ago, and it's way beyond satellite communication capabilities that I talk as an introductions. I wanted to start with that because that shows that lot is going on, and if we do not do anything with coordinating all those projects, we will have a very difficult situations because anything. And to ensure that the main mission, the primary missions of what the purpose of why we launch such engines and tools, spacecrafts, is met. And to do so, we need to ensure that communications are running smoothly. Then for all of that, one of the priority for any space project is to ensure that space communications runs at stage of the definition of any missions to space, because those communication links will that you don't lose a million or billion-dollar project in space, because if you cannot communicate with it, that you lost both the spacecraft but also any future for long term, because you will need to restart the project, and this is not something that anybody wants to do. And to do the space communication links, you need to define type of data you want to capture and how to send them regularly back to the Earth to ensure that you wanted to get, whether pictures or the sensors coming from sensors at the right time. You need to track and command the launch and the in-orbit phase. To do so, there is specific communication links that have been defined. And you need also to command the spacecraft to come back or to do any in-orbit maneuver. And to do so, you need a link with the Earth. We all have in mind this big room where for any launch of a spacecraft, there is many engineers looking at the screen, and they are monitoring all those data coming from space. And this is a enabler for any space project. This is often your success is going if you have well-defined your communication links. The main thing about that is that as it is wireless, if you don't manage the definition and the organization of those communication links, you will have an interference occurring, and this risk needs to be controlled and mitigated. And to do so, we have the beautiful world of the regulation that comes into place, and it has been in place for many years. First, internationally, the International Telecommunications Union is one of the oldest United Nations agency that deals with communications and satellites and orbit management. Indeed, when you want to launch anything in space, you need to be sure that you are allowed to do so, because this organ is managing the access to orbit, the one I mentioned before, and the spectrum resources. They are all regulated by the ITU through those wonderful books. When I started my career, obviously there was DVDs, but this is very important. It's meaning that all the members of the ITU, which is a UN agency, meaning that all the 193 countries signed this treaty, and meaning they are agreeing around the rules that that are defined into them. Obviously, it is not set in stone, because this field allows anybody working there to be very aware of new technologies and new innovations, because the spectrum management is not fixed in time. You have regular review to take into account innovations. During World Radio Communication Conference, where you have all the 192 countries going together for 4 weeks, even a bit more, to discuss how we can change this treaty. And to do so, it is done. And this year is a key year for our activity, because we have at the end of the year the World Radio Conference of 2023 that will be held in Dubai, where many topics will be handled and discussed to modify this treaty. Obviously, I put the map also on how is done. It is done per regions in Earth due to the history, because of the time it has started. The regions were divided into three, where Europe and Africa are region 1, Americas region, and Asia Pacific region 3. And those regions obviously have could have different type of spectrum management rules due to the history mainly, and also due to priority regions, because you may face different regional difference in the spectrum management rules. And to do so, there is also many coordinations those regions to ensure that there is a kind of harmonized use of the spectrum. You have the national level, because this is international. The governments are agreeing on principles of spectrum management. And after you go back to the national level, where as an operator, for example, in communication industry, when you have access to orbit and spectrum at any, go back to the national level, because at one point you will need to have Earth stations that or also terminals that you want to communicate with, that your satellites wants to communicate with, will go through national territories. And those national territories require for any operators to access their country through a license or land rights, or there is many terms depending on the country. And this is very important for any satellite or space actor to ensure that nationally it is done well. There is another aspect also, because whatever you launch in space is the responsibility of a member state, of a national country. Meaning that if you launch from France, for example, a French operator, and you have a French spacecraft that you want to launch, you need to also comply with the laws in France, la loi des opérations spatiales. In other countries, there is also other national space laws that frame the way you are authorized to launch your spacecraft. Indeed, in all for all satellites, there is a requirement for maintaining your space, also its end of life. And that is very important, because that will allow us to have debris mitigations and ensure that you are not polluting the space through non-controlled satellites that could create debris. And in those altitudes, it's very difficult and dangerous for other satellite communications projects that are launched. I wanted to use my experience at Kinéis, my latest experience, to try to understand how does because it's not very easy to take all the cases of licenses and how it is regulated. And this is why I presented what we do. We face any regulations from what I just introduced so far. Here you see our system, very simplified, but this is mainly how it works. You have satellites that will launch around 650 kilometers. And you have also terminals that are spread around the globe that communicate with those satellites. Obviously, we need ground stations that support the telemetry and control of the satellites. And those ground stations are located in our case, in 20 sites worldwide. And those ground stations will send, receive commands from the mission center and of Kinéis. If I take the angle of regulations, we are a French operator, then we and gotten all the authorizations to comply with that. From France, we are allowed to launch those satellites. We will do so at the end of the year. It's 25 nanosatellite constellations, and we will launch from New Zealand with Rocket Lab. And those nanosatellites are not launched for nothing. The idea behind them are to support space Internet of Things, meaning that if you have a need to connect in terrestrial services, an asset to ensure that the temperature is maintained or to track it globally, because the satellite will pass all day long anywhere in the world. You will be able to send those data to Kineis links to the satellites. To do so, they are using spectrum. We are operating in UHF today, and this in around 400 megahertz. And those frequencies are allocated to radio services. Then what is happening is that Kineis has first declared its operations to the ITU. The ITU has processed our filing, published it, and in the band that we operate, there is a rule that you need to see whoever filed before you in the same frequencies to ensure that you are coordinating with them to allow for any terminals operating in the same frequency to be not interfered and not interfering with any previous filings. This is one of the link, the communication link going from terminals. This is coordinated at international level. We have also filings to ensure TT&C links are declared, and you have to coordinate every ground stations. I said that there is 19 around the globe for any frequency that are communicating. If I take the telemetry, which is a link that the ground station, we operate a frequency band that is allocated to space operations, and those frequencies are with also as a first come, first served. Then we have coordinated the fact that if another user is here using the same frequency, we run some simulations and so that there is no interference. And we, in case of interference, we try to find mitigation techniques to ensure that when the communication links occur, they will not be interfered. Obviously, it's not a static approach. There is always newcomers, and then the rule that were applied to Kineis will apply to them, and they will talk to us with regard to their use to ensure that it is coordinated. This is at the international level, but after it's not finished, you need to go to each country that you may operate. It is required for any operators to ensure that we have the licenses received from to and from space, and they take the shape of their land device or national license to ensure that such communications is duly authorized by the country where we operate. With that, I will stop here. I wanted to present one case study, but if there is any other questions, we can go deeper into details depending on your wishes. Sorry.
Right. So thank you for the presentation, Asia, and again, thank you for the flexibility. As you mentioned, you're currently not at home, but you still managed to present and shared some really insightful details. So there are some questions in the chat. So let me start first of all with my question to you. So yep. So how do you believe that the international cooperation and collaboration can help to address some of the legal and regulatory complexities associated with space activities, especially as more and more companies are becoming active and more countries are joining the space sector?
Yeah, in fact, I think the more the merrier. I truly invite every young professional and every person interested to participate to any events. They are quite open, meaning that every administration have the experience of France and other countries. They are always open to newcomers. There is a lot of projects that are wide, where you can present your project wherever you are from, and also directly to the ITU. The ITU, for example, new companies, because there is obviously the big names from manufacturers to operators that have sector membership, but also there is academic to those discussions, because for the spectrum regulation, at least there is this year this conference, and any company can to have a membership to the ITU and participate to those meetings, because it's important, because if you have a project, as I said, the first one of the first funding, let's say, one of the first topics that you need to handle will be how retrieve the data that you try to collect, or the mission that you try to do. We need to have communication links at one point, and to do so, you will rely on spectrum, you will rely on links and orbits, and to do so, you need to ensure that there are if they are not, you need to participate to such forum to ensure that the evolution is done, and for the next version of the regulation. In the meantime, there is space agencies also quite open and listening to projects. And for France, this is the French Space Agency, CNES, that has close links to innovators. Those are the kind of ideas that you can pursue. And what is lacking today, for example, I had a new hire in my company's a worldwide training on the regulations in the space industry. Very difficult to enter into this domain, because it's very particular. But I see many efforts worldwide to train young professionals around those topics, and just knock on your administration and try to present your project at first, and that would be a great step.
All right, great, absolutely. So there is another question, Asia, from Mikhail, and he is asking that there are currently 3 large Western constellations, so Starlink, OneWeb, and Kuiper, that are being again developed and active, and with thousands of satellites that they have planned to add again. China is also planning their constellation. So how do you think these projects will be able to be in compliance with frequency spectrum usage in all of the countries?
I saw a lot of efforts coming from those companies. I think, first of all, they are really welcome, as there was a need of connectivity, because those constellations are targeting broadband connectivity, meaning that wherever you are in the world, you can have access to any application that you have on your phone, to simplify greatly. And those projects were not new. They start. I remember OneWeb was starting in 2012, their project, and also a topic that started in the 2000s. They were big constellations. And to answer the questions, it's obviously multi-layered. There is a discussion inter-operators. As I mentioned, is the ITU filings, and all those constellations have filings at the ITU. And as I mentioned, there is a kind of first come, first served, meaning that they need to coordinate to ensure that their operation are not interfering with each other. And to do so, this is a very complicated topic. Discussing between themselves around that to ensure that the inter-systems are not occurring. And after the licensing part, it's true, it's a really difficult part because, as I mentioned, there is the international level with you are allowed to launch a system at this orbits with this frequency bands, but you are not doing that for the beauty of it. You need to have customers in nations. The first thing that the international declaration allows you to do is to communicate in international waters, international territories, without national, meaning that at least boats and other international national licenses. And the second step is the national licenses. And to do so, it's kind of, I was mentioning briefly the regional level. In Europe, there is a group that tries to harmonize the access to Europe for satellite operator, and those initiatives need to be streamlined more globally, meaning that if I have a license in France, the European Union have a single market perspective, then that should allow me to have operation in all Europe. And that should be encouraged in other regions of the world. And to do so, it's like kind of trying to present the interests of those projects to those nations and opening the market to grants of licenses is a big task. I agree. Not impossible, but a big task.
Perfect. Wonderful. Once again, Asia, thank you for the answers. Thank you for the presentation. I'm sure everybody got the answers that they were looking for about, again, licensing and this very important issue that needs to be, again, regulated, carefully monitored, and need to be compliant by a lot of those organizations and new projects that are coming up. So very important. Thank you once again, Asia. Yeah, we'll be happy to see you again next year with some of the updates on how those constellations and how those companies manage to, again, comply by those regulations and what new updates and new regulations there are being, again, introduced into the space industry. So thank you, Asia, and we'll be happy to see you next year once again.
Thank you. Have a nice day.
Wonderful. You as well.